Children of Two Rivers. In the harsh Colorado Territory of 1876, where Apache resistance and railroad expansion collide, former Confederate surgeon Marcus Wade discovers 4 orphaned children beside their murdered Cherokee mother. Against territorial laws forbidding racial mixing and his own buried prejudices, he secretly raises the siblings. Unaware their Apache father rides the warpath seeking vengeance against the very railroad men who destroyed his family. Marcus's decision to protect these children will force him to confront both hostile townspeople, demanding their removal, and a grieving Apache chief who believes his bloodline died with his wife. A Moonlit Canyon, 1891. Gunfire echoes between red rock walls. Marcus Wade and Thunder Walker stand shoulder to shoulder, surrounded by railroad enforcers. 4 young adults move with deadly precision around them, part Cherokee Grace, part Apache Fury. They defend a small trading post where both white settlers and Apache families shelter inside. "Hand over the half-breed children, or everyone dies," calls the railroad foreman. Thunder Walker and Marcus exchange a look. The Apache warrior whispers something in his native tongue. Marcus nods, Silverbeard trembling, before stepping forward alone toward the armed men. Chapter 1. The Finding. 15 years earlier, snow fell like ash across the Colorado mountains. The winter of 1876 had been the harshest in memory, turning the mining territory into a frozen hell where only the desperate survived. Dr. Marcus Wade rode his gelding away from the Colton mine, payment for setting a broken arm weighing heavy in his coat, $3 silver and a bottle of laudanum. The mine foreman had barely looked at him while counting the coins. Confederate surgeons were tolerated when bones needed mending, forgotten when the healing was done. The war had been over 11 years, but some wounds never closed. Something glinted in the afternoon sun ahead. Marcus squinted through swirling snow. A wagon, overturned beside the trail. Fresh blood stained the white ground around it like spilled wine. He dismounted carefully, hand moving to the Navy Colt at his hip. Railroad men had been pushing through Cherokee land for months, and the tribes weren't taking kindly to surveyors and their armed escorts. The woman lay half buried in snow, her blood long frozen. Cherokee, by her dress and the silver ornaments in her dark hair. But it was what moved beside her that stopped his breath. 4 small forms huddled together beneath a buffalo hide, breath misting in the bitter air. Children. The oldest maybe 8, the youngest still nursing. Mixed blood by their features. Cherokee mother, Apache father, if Marcus read the signs correctly. The kind of children that belonged nowhere in either world. The oldest child, a girl with fierce dark eyes, looked up at him without fear. Her siblings pressed close behind her. 2 boys and another girl, all watching him with that peculiar intensity children develop when death stalks close. "You speak English?" Marcus asked gently. The girl nodded. "Mother said, if something happened, find the doctor with kind hands." Marcus looked down at his hands, scarred from war surgery, steady from years of healing. How had a Cherokee woman known about him? "What are your names?" "I am Ayana," the eldest said. "This is Koa and Nalnish," she indicated her brothers, "and Doli." The youngest girl, no more than 4, clung to her sister's hand. Cherokee names. But Marcus could see Apache features in their bone structure, the set of their shoulders. Children caught between 2 worlds, orphaned by whoever had killed their mother. The decision formed slowly, like winter ice claiming a stream. He had lost everything in the war: his practice, his family, his faith in causes. These children would die in this snow if left alone. The territorial authorities would separate them, send them to different reservations, or worse. Marcus wrapped them in his coat and the buffalo hide. Before leaving, he carefully removed the silver and turquoise bracelet from the woman's wrist. Something to remember. Something to explain someday. Chapter 2. The Raising. He named the place Haven Creek for the small stream that ran behind his cabin, far enough from the mining settlements to avoid questions, close enough to civilization to trade medical services for supplies. The children adapted with the resilience of the young. Ayana, the natural leader, learned to read from his medical texts while helping tend his herb garden. Koa, quiet and observant, proved to have a gift for tracking and hunting. Nalnish, the youngest boy, possessed hands as steady as Marcus's own when setting bones or mixing medicines. And little Dolly seemed to understand languages before they were spoken. Cherokee, Apache, English, and the silent communication that flowed between her siblings like water finding its course. They were connected by something Marcus couldn't name. When one fell ill, the others sensed it before symptoms appeared. When danger approached, a mountain cat, a rattlesnake, hostile strangers, they moved as one organism, protecting each other with instincts deeper than thought. Marcus taught them medicine and Latin, reading and arithmetic. In return, they taught him survival, how to move silently through pine forests, how to read weather in the movement of birds, how to find water in desert country. They spoke Cherokee among themselves, and sometimes words that sounded like Apache. When Marcus asked where they learned the second language, they would only say, "From dreams." The children were 10 when the first real trouble began. A trading party had spotted them in the mountains. 4 young half-breeds living with the old Confederate doctor. Word spread through the mining camps like wildfire. Reverend Samuel Morse arrived on a Tuesday, black coat severe against the autumn landscape. He claimed to represent the Territorial Child Welfare Commission, though Marcus suspected he represented something more mercenary. "Those children need proper Christian education," Morse declared from his horse, not bothering to dismount. "Half-breed children left to run wild become problems for decent folks." Ayanna stepped forward, now tall for her age, features clearly showing her mixed heritage. "We're not wild, Reverend. We read Latin and Cherokee. We know medicine and mathematics. We know the names of stars and the properties of healing plants." "Blasphemy and heathen nonsense," Morse replied. "These children belong in institutions where they can be properly civilized." That night, Marcus showed them the bracelet for the first time. Silver and turquoise in patterns that seemed to shift in the lamplight. "I've been asking questions," he told them. "About a Cherokee woman who married an Apache warrior. About a trader's daughter who chose love over tribal politics." The children gathered close, Dolly curling into Ayanna's lap. "There was an Apache chief," Marcus continued, "whose Cherokee wife disappeared during a railroad survey attack. They say he still searches the territories, leaving destruction wherever he rides. They call him Thunderwalker." "Our father," Nalnish said quietly, not a question. "If he lives, he's fighting a war against the railroad that can't be won. The Apache are outnumbered, outgunned, running out of places to hide." Koa's jaw tightened. Would he want us if he knew? Marcus had no answer. He had raised them in a world that wanted neither their mother's people nor their father's. He had taught them to heal and hunt, to read books and track game, to speak English and the fragments of Cherokee and Apache they had learned over the years. He had not taught them how to live between worlds that only wanted them gone. Later that night, Dolly spotted the figure watching their cabin from the distant ridgeline. Moonlight gleamed on something metal in his hands. "Someone's watching," she whispered. Marcus doused the lamps. "Stay inside." But in the morning, the watcher was gone. Only tracks remained, an Apache warrior's pony, steel-shod for long travel, and carved into a pine tree near where he'd waited, a symbol that made Marcus's blood run cold. The Thunderbird of the Chiricahua Apache. Chapter 3. The Storm Gathering. The railroad came to the valley like a steel snake seeking prey. Survey teams appeared first, measuring and mapping, followed by guards with Winchester rifles. The territorial government had granted them rights of way through traditional Apache hunting grounds, and the tribes weren't taking the intrusion quietly. Marcus found himself treating more gunshot wounds, more knife cuts, more broken bones from accidents that looked suspiciously like ambushes. The children helped with the healing, their gentle hands and soft voices, soothing men who might otherwise shoot them on sight. It was Koa who first identified their patient as more than just another injured surveyor. The man had been found half dead beside the new railroad grade, torn up by what the crew claimed was a bear attack. But Marcus's trained eye recognized knife wounds, and the scars covering the man's chest told stories of battles fought with more than animals. "He's Apache," Koa said quietly, while they cleaned the unconscious man's wounds. The warrior was perhaps 40, his body marked by years of warfare. Ritual scars crossed his chest and arms. Fresh bullet wounds marked his shoulder and thigh. His face, slack with fever, held lines of grief deeper than any child should recognize. They brought him to the root cellar beneath the cabin, hidden from prying eyes. Nalnish cleaned his wounds, while Ayana prepared medicines. Koa and Doli erased tracks and watched for approaching strangers. When Marcus discovered them 3 hours later, his face went pale as mountain snow. "Do you know what you've done?" The children looked at the warrior, then at their guardian. "He would have died," Nalnish said simply. Marcus knelt beside the unconscious man. His body told stories the children couldn't read. Ceremonial scars, battle wounds, years of vengeance etched into flesh. Marcus recognized him from wanted posters in town, from whispered fears in the mining camps. Thunderwalker, the Apache war chief, who left no railroad men alive. The father of his children. Chapter 4. Recognition. Thunderwalker had not expected to survive the railroad guard's ambush. The bullet in his shoulder should have finished what the one in his thigh had started. 15 years of raiding, of vengeance, of watching his people herded onto reservations or killed outright. 15 years of searching for a ghost, his Cherokee wife who had vanished during a survey team attack, carrying his unborn children. Fever dreams held him prisoner. Her face, the sound of her laughter, the weight of her hand on his chest when she told him of the 4 lives growing within her. 4 children he would never meet. He woke to unfamiliar walls, clean straw beneath him, fresh bandages on his wounds. A young man sat nearby, mixing medicines with steady hands. "Who are you?" Thunderwalker's voice scraped like stone on stone. "Nalnish. My sister found you by the creek." The young man offered a clay cup of water. "Our guardian says you were shot 3 times. Guardian. Sister." English words spoken with careful precision, but something familiar beneath them. Something that tugged at memories Thunderwalker had tried to bury. "Where am I?" "Safe," Nalnish said, not answering the question directly. The door opened. An older white man entered, gray-bearded and cautious, followed by 3 others, 2 young women and another young man. All bore the features Thunderwalker recognized, the bone structure that haunted his dreams. "You're awake," the white man said. Thunderwalker studied him. Strength there, wisdom, but no fear, though he kept a rifle ready. "I'm Dr. Marcus Wade. These children made the choice to help you. I'm making sure it wasn't a mistake." The way he said children, claiming them, protecting them. Something in their faces pulled at Thunderwalker's heart. "I am called Thunderwalker. I know who you are." The doctor didn't offer his name in return. "Rest. When you can ride, you should go." But it was the oldest girl who spoke next, stepping forward with the fearless grace her mother had possessed. "You have our mother's bracelet," she said quietly. Thunderwalker's hand moved instinctively to his throat, where silver and turquoise hung beneath his shirt. He pulled it out slowly, the sacred ornament catching lamplight. 4 pairs of eyes fixed on it with recognition that went deeper than memory. "Where did you get this?" His voice barely audible. "From our mother's body," Ayana said, "before this man found us and saved our lives." The words hit Thunderwalker like physical blows. His children, alive, grown, healthy. The family he had thought lost forever, raised by a white doctor with scarred hands and gentle heart. "How long?" he whispered. 15 years, Marcus said. "They were infants when I found them. Your wife, she had hidden them before the attack came." Thunderwalker closed his eyes, seeing her face again. Brave little dear, the Cherokee woman who had chosen love over tribal politics, who had married an Apache warrior and paid the price when railroad surveyors found their camp. Chapter 5. Truth and Consequences. The reunion was not the joyful meeting Thunderwalker had imagined in his fever dreams. These children, his children, spoke English as their first language, knew white medicine and Cherokee stories, could read Latin, but had never learned the full Apache tongue of their father. Yet something deeper connected them. When he taught them Apache words for sacred things, they absorbed them like desert earth drinking rain. When he showed them war signs and hunting calls, their hands formed the shapes as if remembering rather than learning. "Why do you fight the railroad?" Ayanna asked on the third evening, as they sat by the fire while Marcus checked his healing wounds. "Why does the eagle fight the snake?" Thunderwalker replied. "Because one must survive." "Survival doesn't require killing," Dolly said softly. Though the youngest, she often spoke with wisdom beyond her years. "Your guardian teaches peace. My people know only war now." "We know both," Koa said from the doorway, always watching, always alert. "Marcus taught us to heal. You can teach us to protect what we heal." Thunderwalker studied his son, tall, strong, with the patient eyes of a hunter. "The railroad will not stop because we ask them to." "Then we don't ask," Nalnish said, hands steady as he ground medicines in a stone bowl. "We negotiate from strength." Days stretched into weeks. Thunderwalker's strength returned slowly, but more than his body was healing. The hollow space in his chest, empty since his wife's disappearance, began to fill with something unexpected: hope. The children showed him their world, the trading post Marcus had established, where miners and Cherokee families both came for medicine and supplies, the garden where they grew healing plants using both Cherokee and Apache techniques, the hidden canyon where they practiced skills Thunderwalker recognized: stalking, tracking, reading signs that told stories of the land. "Marcus didn't just raise us," Ayanna explained as they walked the canyon rim. "He let us become who we were meant to be." Thunderwalker watched his daughter move with perfect balance along the narrow ledge. "What were you meant to be?" "Bridges," she said simply, "between worlds that think they're enemies." The sound of horses shattered their mountain peace. Railroad guards, 8 of them, riding hard toward the cabin. They had found Thunderwalker's trail at last. Inside, Marcus gave crisp orders to the children, while Thunderwalker retreated to the root cellar. But this time, the hiding place wasn't for concealment. It was for strategy. Voices filtered through the floorboards. "We're tracking a wounded Apache. Probably died somewhere up in those rocks, but we need to be sure." "No one here but us," Marcus replied calmly. "Those your children we saw moving around. They are interesting-looking young folks for a white doctor to be raising." A pause. "God's blessings come in many forms, Sergeant." Footsteps above, boots searching corners, opening doors. "These are Apache markings on this leather," a guard observed. "My children are interested in native crafts. I encourage learning." "Doctor, harboring hostiles is a hanging offense. So is trespassing on private property without a warrant." The footsteps retreated. Horses galloped away. The cellar door opened. Marcus's face was grim. "They'll be back with more men and proper papers." Chapter 6. The Alliance. That night, while the children slept, Thunderwalker and Marcus sat by the dying fire, 2 men whose lives had been shaped by the same violence. "Why did you save them?" Thunderwalker asked. "The war took everything from me," Marcus said quietly. "My practice, my family, my faith in causes, these children gave me a reason to keep healing instead of just surviving." Thunderwalker stared into the flames. "I have spent 15 years destroying what you have built. Hope, peace, the possibility that our peoples might coexist. You've been fighting for your people's survival. I can't fault you for that. But you've shown a different way." Marcus nodded toward the sleeping children. They showed me the way. I just tried not to interfere with their becoming. Thunderwalker reached into his shirt and withdrew something wrapped in soft deerskin, a folded paper, worn from years of carrying. "Your wife's letter," he said, handing it to Marcus. "She wrote it before the attack, meant for me to find if something happened to her." Marcus unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. The handwriting was careful, precise. "My beloved Thunderwalker, if you read this, then our children and I have joined the spirit world ahead of you. Do not spend your life seeking vengeance. Our 4 little ones are bridges between your world and mine. Find them. Raise them to build peace we could not create. Let them be the answer to the question our love asked." Brave little dear. Silence stretched between the 2 men like a held breath. "She knew," Marcus whispered. "Somehow, she knew you would find them." "Not me," Thunderwalker corrected. "She knew they would find the right person to raise them until I could return. And now?" Thunderwalker folded the letter carefully, his wife's words settling into his heart like seeds finding soil. "Now we give them the choice." Chapter 7. The Choice. Dawn brought riders from 2 directions, railroad guards from the east, Apache warriors from the west. Thunderwalker's raiding party had finally tracked their missing chief to the doctor's cabin. The forces that had been hunting each other for months were about to collide with the children caught between them. Marcus stood on the porch, the 4 young people flanking him. Thunderwalker emerged from the cabin, no longer hiding. "This is it," Ayanna said calmly. "The moment we've been preparing for our whole lives." The railroad sergeant called out first. "Dr. Wade, by order of the Territorial Authority, surrender the Apache war criminal Thunderwalker and the half-breed children under your protection." From the other direction, Thunderwalker's war chief, Running Bear, shouted in Apache. "Thunderwalker, we have come to take you home." Caught between 2 forces, the family that had formed itself around hope and healing faced its greatest test. "What do we do?" Dolly asked, though she was no longer the frightened 4-year-old Marcus had found in the snow. Thunderwalker looked at his children, tall, strong, wise beyond their years. "We do what your mother wanted. We build bridges." Ayanna stepped forward, addressing both groups in a voice that carried across the valley. "I am Ayanna, daughter of Thunderwalker and brave little deer. These are my brothers and sister, children of 2 peoples, raised by a healer who taught us that strength comes from protecting what we love, not destroying what we fear." The railroad sergeant raised his rifle. "Stand aside, girl. We've got business with the Apache." "Your business is with all of us," Koa said, moving beside his sister. "We are Apache and Cherokee, and the children of this land that you tear apart for your railroad." Nalnish joined them. "We have learned medicine and war, healing and hunting. We speak the languages of both our peoples and yours." Dolly completed the line, 4 children standing between the forces that wanted to destroy each other. "We offer you a choice," she said, her young voice steady as stone. "Continue the killing until nothing remains, or listen to what peace might sound like." Chapter 8. The Negotiation. What happened next would be talked about around campfires and in saloons for generations. Instead of violence, there was conversation. Instead of bullets, there were words. Thunderwalker spoke first to his Apache warriors. "These children are my blood, raised with honor by this white doctor. They are strong, wise, trained in both worlds. They offer something we have never had, the ability to speak for our people to those who have power over our fate." Then he turned to the railroad men. "I have spent 15 years fighting your railroad because it takes from my people without giving anything in return. These children propose a different way." Ayanna stepped into the space between the 2 groups. "The railroad needs to cross Apache land to reach the mining territories. The Apache need trade goods and medicine that only the railroad can bring efficiently. Both sides need peace more than they need pride." The sergeant scoffed. Indians can't negotiate with the railroad. That's government business. We can, Nalnish said. We speak English and Apache and Cherokee. We understand mining and medicine and the law. We can translate more than languages. We can translate needs and possibilities. Marcus watched his adopted children with pride swelling in his chest. They had grown into exactly what their mother had envisioned: bridges between worlds. Running Bear, Thunderwalker's war chief, voiced the Apache concern. The whites have broken every treaty they have ever made. Why would this be different? Because this time, Dolly said, the people making the agreement have everything to lose if it fails. This is our home. These are our families. We can't run away to Washington when things go wrong. The railroad sergeant looked uncertain. This wasn't the simple arrest he had expected. I don't have authority to negotiate anything. Then get someone who does, Ayanna said. We'll wait. Chapter 9. The test word traveled fast through the territory. Within a week, officials from Denver arrived: territorial representatives, railroad executives, and Indian Bureau agents. The small cabin at Haven Creek became the center of attention for hundreds of miles around. The negotiations were unlike anything anyone had seen. The children served as interpreters, but more than that, they were translators of cultures, explaining Apache concerns in terms railroad men could understand, describing railroad needs in ways that honored Apache values. The railroad wants a path through the mountains, Koa explained to the Apache Council. Not to take the land, but to pass through it, like a river finding the sea. The Apache want compensation for the game driven away, Ayanna told the railroad executives. Not money that can be stolen, but ongoing trade relationships that benefit both peoples. Day after day, the talks continued. Tempers flared, weapons were drawn, trust broke and rebuilt like ice forming and melting in spring. Thunderwalker and Marcus found themselves working together, the Apache war chief and the Confederate doctor, united in protecting the children who had brought them together. They're doing something we never could, Thunderwalker observed, as he watched Nalnish explain mining techniques to Apache warriors, while Dolly taught Cherokee healing songs to railroad wives. They're being what they've always been, Marcus replied. What their mother saw in her dreams. The answer to the question her love asked. But not everyone wanted peace. Reverend Morse returned with territorial marshals and legal documents declaring the children wards of the state, to be removed to distant boarding schools. Half-breed children living wild with Indians and Confederate criminals, he proclaimed. It's an abomination that undermines Christian civilization. The confrontation came to a head when Morse and his marshals attempted to arrest the children during a council meeting. Apache warriors reached for weapons. Railroad guards drew guns. 15 years of hatred and violence balanced on a knife's edge. Then Ayanna did something no one expected. She began to sing. Chapter 10. The Song. It was a Cherokee lullaby her mother had hummed before she was born, passed down through generations of Cherokee women. Transformed by Apache rhythm, Thunderwalker had sung to her as a baby, shaped by the English words Marcus had taught her, and finally given voice by the love of a family that had chosen itself. One by one, the others joined her. Koa added harmony in Apache. Nalnish provided rhythm like a heartbeat. Dolly wove Cherokee and English words through the melody like silver threads through dark cloth. Thunderwalker found himself singing his wife's favorite song, the one she had hummed while pregnant with their children. Marcus, who had not sung since the war, added his voice to theirs. The marshals and warriors slowly lowered their weapons. The song wasn't loud, but it filled the valley like dawn filling the sky, inevitable and impossible to resist. When the music faded, something had changed. The air itself felt different, charged with possibility instead of violence. This is what peace sounds like, Dolly said into the silence. Reverend Morse sputtered protests, but the territorial representative, a pragmatic man named Governor Hayes, held up a hand. Reverend, I've seen enough Indian wars to last several lifetimes. If these children can prevent another one, I'm willing to listen to whatever they propose. Chapter 11. The Proposal. The agreement they hammered out over the following days was unlike any treaty in American history. It recognized the children as official intermediaries between the Apache Nation and the territorial government. It established Haven Creek as neutral territory where Apache families could trade freely with white settlers. It guaranteed railroad passage through traditional hunting grounds in exchange for ongoing compensation in goods and services. Most importantly, it created something entirely new, a small community where people of all backgrounds could live and work together, governed by consensus rather than conquest. It's an experiment, Governor Hayes admitted. Washington won't like it. Neither will the tribal councils back east, but it might just work. The railroad executives were more cautious. What guarantee do we have that other Apache bands will honor this agreement? Thunderwalker stood, the silver and turquoise bracelet gleaming at his throat. I will ride to every Apache camp from here to Mexico. I will tell them my children have found a path between the old ways and the new world coming. Those who wish to walk that path will be welcome here. And if they refuse, then they will continue to fight, and you will continue to hunt them. But my children will be here, building something worth preserving, showing another way. Reverend Morse made one final attempt to derail the negotiations. These half-breed children are corrupting influences. They'll create a mongrel settlement that undermines racial purity. Ayanna faced him directly. Reverend, look at what racial purity has given you. 15 years of warfare, hundreds of deaths, families destroyed on both sides. Our corruption has given you a chance for peace. The vote was close, but the agreement passed. Haven Creek would become an official experiment in coexistence, with the children serving as official liaisons, and Marcus as territorial physician. Chapter 12. The building spring came early to Haven Creek that year. With the snows barely melted, Apache families began arriving, followed by white settlers seeking land where they could farm without fear of raids. Cherokee families came from the eastern reservations, drawn by stories of relatives who had found a place between worlds. The children threw themselves into the work of building community. Ayanna established a school where children learned English, Cherokee, and Apache, alongside mathematics and medicine. Koa organized hunting parties that included both Apache warriors and white farmers, teaching conservation methods that ensured game for everyone. Nalnish set up a clinic where traditional Apache healing worked alongside Marcus's Western medicine. Dolly created a network of women from all backgrounds who shared child-rearing, cooking, and crafts. Thunderwalker found himself in an unfamiliar role, not war chief, but peace chief, mediating disputes between Apache families and newcomers, teaching young warriors how to channel their energy into building instead of destroying. Marcus watched the community grow with wonder. Your wife was more than prophet, he told Thunderwalker one evening as they observed children from 3 cultures playing together. She was architect of a future none of us could have imagined. But not everyone supported the experiment. Railroad interests that preferred military solutions to Indian problems worked to undermine the agreement. Territorial politicians who had built careers on Indian fighting denounced the community as dangerous precedent. Apache leaders from other bands accused Thunderwalker of selling out to the whites. The crisis came in late summer when a war party led by Thunderwalker's own brother, Black Cloud, attacked a railroad survey team 50 miles east of Haven Creek. The territorial government demanded that Thunderwalker hunt down his brother or face military retaliation against the community. Chapter 13. Brother Against Brother. The confrontation between Thunderwalker and Black Cloud took place in the canyon where the children had practiced their skills, where 2 worldviews collided like summer storms over the mountains. You have forgotten who you are, Black Cloud accused his brother. You live with whites, take their protection, raise your children to be their servants. I have remembered who I was meant to be, Thunderwalker replied. A father, a builder, a protector of life instead of a dealer of death. Black Cloud gestured toward the settlement visible in the valley below. This is not Apache life. It is surrender disguised as peace. This is survival disguised as surrender, Ayana interjected, stepping between the two warriors. Uncle, I understand your anger. The whites have taken much from our people, but destroying what little remains won't bring back what's lost. The war party numbered 20 Apache warriors, all young, all angry, all ready to die for honor that felt more real than life. They faced Thunderwalker, Marcus, and the 4 children who had chosen to build instead of burn. These children are not Apache, Black Cloud declared. They are Whitehearts wearing Apache faces. Koa stepped forward. Test us, Uncle. Any test you choose. We know the old ways as well as the new. What followed was unlike any challenge in Apache tradition. The war party demanded proof of Apache skills, tracking, hunting, riding, fighting. But the children added their own conditions. The losers would listen to the winners' arguments for 1 full day and night. The tests were brutal. Dawn to dusk tracking across mountain territory. Hunting challenges that required stealth, patience, and connection to the land. Horse racing and weapon skills that pushed everyone to their limits. But it was the final challenge that surprised everyone. Dolly proposed a test of wisdom. Each side would tell stories, and the watching families from the community would judge which stories better served the people's future. Black Cloud's warriors told traditional tales of Apache courage, of resistance to invasion, of dying with honor rather than living in shame. Their stories were beautiful, painful, true. The children told different stories, of their Cherokee mother's courage in choosing love over tribal politics, of their Apache father's love that survived 15 years of war, of the white doctor who risked everything to raise children that weren't his blood, of communities where former enemies became family. As the stories unfolded under star-filled sky, something shifted in the watching faces. The old stories honored the past, but the new stories offered futures. When dawn came, Black Cloud's war party rode away without violence. But 3 of the young warriors stayed behind, asking to learn the new ways alongside the old. Chapter 14. The Railroad's Return. The railroad's final push came in autumn, when company executives decided the Haven Creek experiment had gone too far. Led by a ruthless supervisor named Jeremiah Colt, they arrived with hired gunmen and legal documents, claiming the community violated federal Indian policy. Half-breeds can't own property, Colt declared. Apache can't negotiate treaties. This whole settlement is illegal. Governor Hayes had been replaced by a man more sympathetic to railroad interests. The new territorial authority ordered the community disbanded and the Apache families removed to distant reservations. But Haven Creek had grown beyond what any of them had imagined. The trading post served settlements for 200 miles around. The school educated children from a dozen communities. The clinic treated patients regardless of race or ability to pay. The experimental farms produced crops that fed both Apache families and white settlers. Most importantly, the children had grown into adults whose influence reached far beyond their small valley. Ayana corresponded with Cherokee leaders in the East and government officials in Washington. Koa guided hunting and trading expeditions throughout the territory. Naalnish's medical knowledge drew patients from as far as Denver. Dolly's diplomatic skills had helped negotiate peace agreements between tribes and settlements across Colorado territory. You can't destroy Haven Creek without destroying half the trade networks in this territory, Marcus pointed out during the confrontation with Colt's forces. Watch me, Colt replied. The siege began at sunset. Railroad enforcers surrounded the community, cutting off escape routes and trade routes alike. Inside the settlement, Apache warriors prepared for battle while settler families debated fleeing versus fighting. Thunderwalker faced the hardest decision of his life. Fight and see everything his children had built destroyed in the crossfire, or surrender and watch it dismantled by legal decree. There's a third option, Ayana said that final night as the family gathered in Marcus's cabin. We make our stand not here, but where the whole territory can see. Chapter 15. The Stand. What Ayana proposed was audacious beyond anything they had attempted before. Instead of waiting for the railroad enforcers to attack, They would ride to Denver and confront the territorial legislature directly, demanding hearings on the Haven Creek experiment. "They'll arrest us the moment we arrive," Marcus pointed out. "Let them," Nalnish said. "A trial means testimony. Testimony means truth getting told in places where it matters." They rode out at dawn, Thunderwalker and Marcus side by side, the 4 children around them, followed by representatives from every family in the community. Apache warriors, Cherokee families, white settlers, all united in defense of what they had built together. Behind them, Colts enforcers occupied the settlement, but they found buildings and fields, not people. Haven Creek had become something that couldn't be destroyed by bullets, an idea, a possibility, a proved alternative to endless war. The ride to Denver took 3 days. Along the way, they were joined by others, families from settlements that traded with Haven Creek, tribal representatives who had heard of the peace experiment, even some soldiers who were tired of fighting wars that solved nothing. By the time they reached Denver, their group numbered in the hundreds. The territorial capital wasn't prepared for what descended upon it. Native Americans weren't allowed in most public buildings, but they came anyway. Mixed-race children weren't recognized as citizens, but they demanded to be heard. Confederate doctors weren't welcome in government circles, but Marcus entered the Capitol building with his head high. The hearings lasted 2 weeks. Testimony came from every direction. Railroad executives claiming economic necessity, Apache leaders demanding treaty rights, settlers testifying about lives saved by Haven Creek's medical mission, Cherokee representatives speaking of their people's need for places to exist between reservation life and total assimilation. Chapter 16. The Trial of Truth. The territorial courthouse became a theater where 15 years of frontier warfare was dissected, examined, and judged. Railroad lawyers presented their case with cold efficiency. Indian communities disrupted commerce, mixed-race settlements undermined territorial authority, and experiments in coexistence threatened the natural order of westward expansion. "Gentlemen," railroad attorney Harrison Blackwood argued, "sentiment cannot govern policy." The Cherokee woman who started this unfortunate situation violated federal law by marrying outside her assigned tribe. The Apache warrior who sired these children has killed dozens of white settlers. The Confederate doctor who raised them defied territorial custody laws. This entire community exists in violation of treaties, statutes, and common sense. But when Ayanna took the witness stand, something shifted in the courtroom atmosphere. Now, 24, she carried herself with the grace of her Cherokee mother and the quiet strength of her Apache father, speaking with the educated precision Marcus had taught her. "Honorable judges," she began, "my existence may violate your laws, but my life proves your laws are incomplete. You speak of treaties. I have read every treaty between the United States and the Cherokee Nation, every agreement between the territorial government and the Apache bands. None of them envision children like us, communities like ours, or solutions like we have created." She gestured toward the packed courtroom where Apache warriors sat beside white farmers, where Cherokee grandmothers shared benches with railroad wives. "Your treaties assume our peoples can never coexist, never cooperate, never become family. We are living proof that assumption is wrong." The prosecution objected. "Miss, what is your legal name?" "I am Ayanna Wade," she replied without hesitation. "Daughter of Thunderwalker and Brave Little Deer, raised by Dr. Marcus Wade, citizen of Haven Creek." "Haven Creek is not a legal municipality. You cannot claim citizenship in a place that doesn't officially exist." Thunderwalker rose from the gallery. "Then make it exist. Recognize what we have built. Give legal standing to what has already proven itself in practice." "Sit down," the bailiff ordered. "You're not recognized to speak in this courtroom. I am Thunderwalker of the Chiricahua Apache. I have spent 15 years at war with the United States. I wish to surrender that war in favor of the peace my children have created." The courtroom erupted. Reporters scribbled frantically. Politicians whispered urgent consultations. The judge called for order, but momentum had shifted. Koa took the stand next, describing in precise detail the agricultural techniques that had made Haven Creek's farms more productive than surrounding settlements. Nalnish testified about medical innovations that combined traditional Apache healing with modern surgical techniques. Doley spoke of the school where children learned 4 languages and graduated with skills that made them valuable throughout the territory. Marcus faced the harshest questioning. As a former Confederate surgeon, he was an easy target for prosecutors seeking to discredit the community. Dr. Wade, you violated territorial law by concealing these children's heritage. You defied federal authority by harboring a known Apache war criminal. You established an illegal settlement outside proper jurisdiction. How do you justify these actions? Marcus stood slowly, feeling every year of his age, every weight of his choices. 15 years ago, I found 4 children dying in the snow. I could have left them to freeze, which would have been legal. I could have turned them over to territorial authorities, which would have separated them forever. Instead, I chose to raise them as a family. If that's a crime, I'm guilty. If saving lives is illegal, then your laws are the problem, not my actions. The courtroom was silent as Marcus continued. These children have become healers, teachers, diplomats, and peacemakers. They've prevented more bloodshed in 1 year than all our military campaigns have prevented in 10. They've created a community where former enemies live as neighbors. If that threatens your natural order, perhaps your natural order needs changing. Chapter 17, The Verdict's Edge. As testimony concluded, the political pressures became clear. Railroad interests demanded the community's dissolution. Military leaders feared the precedent of negotiating with hostiles. Eastern politicians worried about mixed-race settlements spreading throughout the territories. But support had grown as well. Territorial Governor Samuel Crawford, Hayes's replacement, had witnessed the community's success firsthand. Local settlers testified that Haven Creek had brought peace and prosperity to a region that had known only violence. Even some military officers spoke privately about preferring peace to endless frontier warfare. The night before the verdict, Thunderwalker and Marcus sat in the Denver jail where they'd been held during the trial. The children had been housed separately, their legal status too ambiguous for normal detention. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Thunderwalker said, "we have given them something my wife dreamed of, the chance to be bridges between worlds." "They've become more than bridges," Marcus replied. "They've become architects of new worlds." Morning brought crowds that spilled from the courthouse into the surrounding streets. Reporters from Eastern newspapers mingled with Apache warriors, Cherokee families, and territorial settlers. The verdict would determine not just the fate of Haven Creek, but the possibility of similar experiments throughout the West. Chief Justice William Morris delivered the decision in measured tones that revealed nothing until the final words. This court finds that while the defendants violated numerous territorial statutes in establishing their community, they have also demonstrated possibilities for peaceful coexistence that transcend existing legal frameworks. We therefore recommend that territorial authority recognize Haven Creek as an experimental municipality with limited self-governance, subject to federal oversight and yearly review. Victory, but incomplete. The community could continue, but under constant scrutiny, dependent on political winds that could shift with elections. Thunderwalker accepted the compromise, but Ayanna had other ideas. Chapter 18, The Greater Plan. Limited self-governance isn't enough, Ayanna told her family as they prepared to return to Haven Creek. We've proved the experiment works on a small scale. Now we need to prove it can work everywhere. Over the following months, the children, now adults with their own vision for the future, began implementing a plan more ambitious than anything their parents had imagined. Using Haven Creek as a base, they established trading relationships with communities throughout Colorado Territory and beyond. COA organized expeditions that included Apache trackers, Cherokee farmers, and white merchants, creating economic networks that made cooperation more profitable than conflict. Nalnish established satellite clinics that brought medical care to remote areas while training mixed teams of healers from different traditions. Doley created communication networks that kept far-flung communities informed about weather, resources, and opportunities. But it was Ayana who conceived the most radical innovation, a confederation of experimental communities, each adapting the Haven Creek model to local conditions and populations. Instead of one community that might be destroyed by changing politics, she explained to a gathering of tribal leaders and territorial officials, we create dozens of communities, hundreds eventually, all connected by trade and kinship and shared success. The idea took root faster than anyone expected. Within 2 years, similar settlements appeared throughout Colorado Territory, some mixing Apache and white settlers, others bringing together different tribal groups, still others creating new combinations of peoples who had never cooperated before. Each community faced unique challenges. Some succeeded brilliantly, others failed spectacularly. But the overall trend was clear. Cooperation proved more sustainable than conflict, and mixed communities often prospered, while segregated ones struggled. Thunderwalker found himself riding constantly between settlements, no longer as a war chief, but as an elder statesman, helping solve disputes and establish trade relationships. The transformation amazed everyone who knew his history. How does a man change so completely? Governor Crawford asked Marcus during one of his inspections of Haven Creek. He doesn't change, Marcus replied, watching Thunderwalker mediate a disagreement between Cherokee farmers and white merchants. He discovers who he was meant to be all along. Chapter 19. The opposition strike success bred opposition. As the network of mixed communities grew, so did resistance from those who preferred the old ways of segregation and conflict. Railroad interests formed alliances with military contractors who profited from frontier warfare. Political factions emerged that promised to clean up the territories and restore proper racial boundaries. The crisis came in the 4th year when a coalition of territorial legislators, backed by railroad money, passed the Purity Act, legislation requiring all settlements to maintain racial segregation and prohibiting mixed-race individuals from owning property or holding official positions. They want to destroy everything we've built, Dolly observed as the family gathered to discuss their response. Then we don't let them, Nalnish said grimly. But Ayana had a different perspective. They want to fight the old war with the old weapons. We fight a new war with new weapons. The new weapons were stories, testimonials, and economic pressure. The network of communities had created trade relationships worth millions of dollars. Mixed settlements produced crops, crafts, and services that supplied markets throughout the region. Shutting down the experiments would disrupt the territorial economy. More importantly, the communities had created something unprecedented, a generation of children who had never known segregation, who moved easily between cultures, who spoke multiple languages, and practiced multiple traditions as naturally as breathing. You can pass laws, Ayana told the territorial legislature when they summoned her to testify about compliance with the Purity Act. But you cannot unknow what we know, unsee what we've seen, or unlive what we've lived. We are the future whether you want us or not. The legislators demanded immediate compliance. Mixed communities must segregate or disband. Mixed-race individuals must choose single racial identities for legal purposes. Interracial marriages must be dissolved. The response was swift and coordinated. Instead of compliance, the communities declared independence from territorial authority, establishing their own confederation with Haven Creek as the capital. You're talking about rebellion, Governor Crawford warned during emergency negotiations. We're talking about evolution, Thunderwalker replied. The old ways of governing territories assumed our peoples could never cooperate. We've created cooperation. Now we need governance that matches our reality. Chapter 20. The War of Independence. What followed was unlike any conflict in American frontier history. Instead of military campaigns, there were economic boycotts. Instead of raids and massacres, there were strikes and trade embargoes. Instead of destroying settlements, the Confederation communities simply stopped supplying goods and services to segregated towns. The territorial government found itself unable to govern people who had created alternative systems of authority, trade, and communication. Military units discovered that mixed communities couldn't be defeated by traditional tactics. When threatened, they simply evacuated into networks of allied settlements, carrying their knowledge and skills with them. Marcus, now in his 70s, served as the Confederation's chief diplomat, negotiating with federal officials who were increasingly concerned about the spreading influence of mixed communities. His reputation as a healer and his lack of tribal affiliation made him a trusted intermediary. "What do you want?" Federal Commissioner James Sullivan asked during one tense negotiation session. "Recognition," Marcus replied simply. "Legal standing for communities that have already proved their worth. Citizenship for people who were born here and built lives here. The right to exist without choosing between the blood of their mothers and the blood of their fathers." "You're asking us to rewrite the basic principles of territorial governance. We're asking you to catch up with the reality we've created." The federal response was mixed. Some officials recognized the economic and strategic advantages of the Confederation communities. Others saw them as threats to racial hierarchy and federal authority. Military leaders were divided between those who wanted to crush the rebellion and those who preferred stability to warfare. The stalemate stretched through a harsh winter during which the Confederation proved its resilience. Communities shared resources across hundreds of miles. Children continued learning in schools that taught skills no segregated institution could match. Trade networks adapted to bypass hostile territories, creating new routes in relationships. Spring brought a new federal negotiator, General John Schofield, a Civil War veteran known for pragmatic solutions rather than ideological purity. Chapter 21. The new treaty General Schofield spent 3 months visiting Confederation communities, talking with leaders from all backgrounds, observing operations that defied everything he thought he knew about frontier governance. "I came here expecting to find chaos," he admitted to Thunder Walker during a tour of Haven Creek's expanded facilities. "Instead, I find order that works better than most Army posts I've commanded." The negotiations took place not in Denver or Washington, but in a great council ground established in the mountains between Haven Creek and the territorial capital. Representatives came from Confederation communities, federal agencies, territorial governments, tribal nations, and railroad companies. For 2 weeks, they hammered out an agreement that would reshape the American West. The Confederation of Free Communities was recognized as a legitimate governmental entity with authority over its member settlements. Mixed-race individuals were granted citizenship and property rights. Trade agreements replaced military occupation as the primary means of managing intercultural relationships. Most importantly, the treaty established a new model for territorial development. Instead of imposed authority, there would be negotiated agreements. Instead of segregated settlements, there would be communities organized around shared interests rather than racial categories. The signing ceremony drew observers from across the continent. Newspaper reporters documented the moment when Thunder Walker, representing Apache interests, and Marcus Wade, representing Confederation communities, signed alongside federal representatives and territorial officials. But it was Ayanna who spoke the words that defined the moment. "Today, we sign more than a treaty. We sign a recognition that America is large enough for all its children, diverse enough for all its dreams, and strong enough to grow beyond the fears that have limited its promise." Chapter 22. The Test of Time. 5 years after the treaty signing, Haven Creek had grown from an experimental settlement into a thriving city of 3,000 people representing dozens of cultural backgrounds. The original cabin where Marcus had raised 4 orphaned children now served as a museum, telling the story of how a family's love had grown into a movement for peace. Thunder Walker, now in his 60s, served as the Confederation's chief mediator, traveling constantly between communities to help solve disputes and establish new settlements. The warrior who had once left no enemies alive had become a creator of alliances that benefited former enemies. Marcus, despite his age, continued practicing medicine and training new healers who combined techniques from multiple traditions. His clinic had become a teaching hospital where Cherokee herbalists worked alongside Apache healers and university-trained doctors. But it was the children, now adults with children of their own, who truly embodied their mother's vision. Ayanna had been elected to the territorial legislature, where she advocated for policies that supported mixed communities throughout the West. Her speeches were translated into dozens of languages and influenced settlement policies from California to Texas. COA managed trade relationships that stretched from Mexico to Canada, creating economic networks that made cooperation more profitable than conflict. His expeditions included guides and traders from every cultural background, proving that diversity strengthened rather than weakened enterprise. Nalnish had established a medical college that attracted students from around the world, eager to learn healing techniques that drew from multiple traditions. His innovations in surgery and pharmacology were studied in universities from Boston to Berlin. Doli had created an education system that produced graduates fluent in multiple languages and cultural practices, skilled in both traditional crafts and modern technologies. Her schools became models for institutions throughout the territories. Chapter 23. The Legacy. The story of Haven Creek and the Confederation of Free Communities spread far beyond Colorado Territory. Delegations arrived from other regions seeking to establish similar settlements. Native American leaders from throughout the continent came to study methods of cultural preservation that didn't require isolation. European immigrants visited to learn how diverse peoples could cooperate rather than compete. But success brought new challenges. As the Confederation grew, it faced pressures to become more like traditional government, more centralized, more bureaucratic, more concerned with control than cooperation. "We're losing what made us special," Doli observed during a family gathering to celebrate Marcus's 80th birthday. "The communities are becoming institutions. The bridges are becoming walls." Thunderwalker, now a grandfather several times over, nodded slowly. "Every generation must choose between the easy path and the right path. We chose the right path. Our children must make the same choice." Marcus, frail but mentally sharp, looked around the table at the family that had grown from tragedy into triumph. "Your mother's dream was never about creating perfect communities," he reminded them. "It was about creating people capable of building whatever communities were needed." As if summoned by his words, the newest generation appeared. Children and teenagers who moved easily between Apache, Cherokee, English, and Spanish, who learned traditional hunting techniques alongside modern agriculture, who saw cultural differences as resources rather than obstacles. "They don't even understand what the old problems were," Ayana observed, watching her teenage son explain Apache tracking methods to his Cherokee friend in English, while their Mexican-American companion translated for his Spanish-speaking sister. "Because we solved the old problems," Thunderwalker replied. "Now they can work on new ones." Chapter 24. The Circle Complete. The final test of the Confederation came 20 years after its founding, when economic depression struck the territories and traditional communities began demanding that resources be restricted to real Americans, meaning white, English-speaking, Protestant settlers. Political movements emerged calling for the dissolution of mixed communities and the deportation of foreign influences. Some Confederation settlements faced economic boycotts. Others experienced violent attacks from groups claiming to restore American purity. The response revealed how deeply the Confederation's values had taken root. Instead of retreating into defensive isolation, the communities opened their doors wider, offering food, shelter, and work to anyone in need regardless of background. Instead of hoarding resources, they shared them more freely. "When people are afraid," Ayana explained to hostile legislators, "they look for someone to blame. We've learned to look for someone to help." The crisis passed as such crises do. Gradually, as people discovered that cooperation served their interests better than conflict. The communities that had shared resources during hard times prospered when prosperity returned. The settlements that had maintained openness attracted the most skilled workers and innovative thinkers. By 1901, 25 years after Marcus first found 4 orphaned children in the Colorado snow, the Confederation of Free Communities included more than 200 settlements across the American West. Mixed communities had become the rule rather than the exception in many regions. Cultural diversity was increasingly seen as an advantage rather than a problem. Thunderwalker died peacefully in his sleep at age 78, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who carried the blood of multiple peoples and the dreams of their ancestors. His funeral was attended by thousands: Apache warriors, Cherokee elders, white settlers, Mexican farmers, Chinese railroad workers, and dozens of other groups that had found homes in Confederation communities. Marcus lived to see his 91st birthday, spending his final years writing the history of Haven Creek and training the next generation of healers. His last words were spoken to Ayanna. Tell them the story. All of it. The failures as well as the successes. The fear as well as the hope. Stories are the only bridges that last. Chapter 25. The New Dawn. Ayanna kept her promise. The story of Haven Creek became required study in Confederation schools, translated into every language spoken in the communities. But more than history, it became a living template for continuing growth. The principles discovered by 4 orphaned children and their adopted father spread throughout the American West and beyond. Communities organized around cooperation rather than competition. Governance based on consensus rather than control. Education that preserved multiple traditions while preparing for changing futures. Not every experiment succeeded. Not every community survived. Not every dream became reality. But enough succeeded to prove that the old ways of organizing society, by race, by religion, by language, by conquest, were not the only ways, perhaps not even the best ways. The children of Haven Creek grew old watching their visions spread throughout the continent. COA's trade networks connected communities from Alaska to Argentina. Nalnish's medical innovations improved healthcare on 6 continents. Doli's educational methods influenced schools from Scandinavia to Southeast Asia. But it was Ayanna who carried the story forward most powerfully. As the Confederation's first president, she established policies that balanced local autonomy with mutual support. As a diplomat, she negotiated agreements that prevented wars and encouraged cooperation. As a writer, she documented experiences that might otherwise have been lost. Her final speech, delivered on the 50th anniversary of the first Treaty of Haven Creek, became one of the most widely quoted addresses in American history. 50 years ago, a Cherokee woman named Brave Little Deer dreamed of children who could bridge the distances between peoples. She died bringing that dream into the world, but her vision lived in the children she gave birth to and the man who raised them. Today, we are all children of that dream. Apache and Cherokee, Mexican and Chinese, African and European. We are the bridges our ancestors prayed for, but couldn't build themselves. We are the answer to questions they asked, but couldn't answer. The old America was built by people who conquered distance by eliminating differences. The new America is built by people who conquer differences by embracing distance. The distance between where we were and where we can become. Our mother's dream was not that we would all become the same, but that our differences would make us stronger. Not that we would forget our histories, but that we would write new histories together. That dream lives in every Confederation community, where children learn multiple languages as naturally as breathing. It lives in every trading expedition where former enemies become partners. It lives in every clinic where healing traditions from around the world combine to save lives that could not be saved by any single tradition. It lives in every family like ours, chosen rather than born, built by love rather than blood, united by dreams rather than divided by fears. 50 years ago, 4 children were bridges between 2 worlds. Today, all our children are bridges between all worlds. Tomorrow, their children will build bridges we cannot yet imagine. This is our mother's legacy. This is our father's gift. This is America's promise. Not that we will all become one people, but that we will become one people capable of being many peoples, stronger for our diversity, wiser for our differences, more human for our capacity to love, beyond the boundaries that once divided us. Epilogue. The story continues. The tale of Haven Creek ended where all true stories end, not with conclusions, but with continuations. The children who had been bridges between worlds raised children who became bridges between galaxies of possibility no one had previously imagined. The Confederation communities continued to evolve, facing new challenges and discovering new solutions. Some settlements failed and were abandoned. Others grew into major cities that attracted residents from around the world. The principles that had guided Haven Creek's founding adapted to circumstances the original founders could never have anticipated. But the essential truth remained. People who might seem impossibly different could become family if they chose to build bridges instead of walls. Communities could organize around shared hopes rather than shared fears. The future could be shaped by love rather than limited by hatred. Marcus Wade's grave in the Haven Creek Cemetery bore a simple inscription. He taught us that healing begins with helping. Beside it lay Thunderwalker's grave. He learned that peace begins with protecting what you love. Between them, a smaller stone marked the symbolic grave of Brave Little Deer, the Cherokee woman, whose children never knew her, but carried her dreams. She dreamed of bridges. Her children became bridges. Her grandchildren built new worlds. And that, perhaps, is all any story can hope to accomplish, to plant seeds of possibility that grow into realities beyond the original dreamer's imagination, to suggest that the distances between peoples are not barriers to be defended, but bridges to be built, and that every ending is also a beginning if we have the courage to begin again. The story of Haven Creek became the story of the American West, which became the story of America itself, which became one of the many stories of what humanity could become when it chose love over fear, cooperation over competition, bridges over walls. And in the end, that may be the only story worth telling. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider supporting stories of hope and bridges between peoples. The future is written by those brave enough to imagine it differently.